Got to get the twine off the bale.
Dan Barnhart has been raising beef cattle for his entire life. His grandfather began working the land outside of Philomath during the Depression, and the ranch has passed down through generations since.
Well, this is, the Barnhart farm, and with that comes the barnyard. And so
Barnhart said he hopes to pass along the ranch to his children one day.
It is a good life, a farm is a great place to raise a family.
But Barnhart has been thinking a lot recently about what exactly he'll be passing off to the next generation.
If I don't take care of the land, if I don't take care of the soils here, what am I passing off? That's really, in a farm, that's what you take over, is the ability to grow things. And so the soil is critical in on that.
Barnhart is part of the Country Natural Beef Ranching Cooperative, a group of roughly 100 ranches across 6.5 million acres of public and private land in 11 western states. The company just launched a program it's calling Grazewell.
As far as I'm aware of, this is the largest group that's implementing a regenerative program at this scale.
Regenerative ranching is a collection of practices aiming to reduce the environmental harm of raising livestock, from changing how cattle graze to using all natural fertilizers.
Yeah.
But Probert said the shift will be a philosophical one, too.
Yeah. What regenerative really means is that we're wanting to move beyond sustainability. So in other words, we can sustain something, but what we're actually trying to do is make it better.
And that all starts with the very ground the cattle walk on.
We want to measure that we're trending in a positive direction, right? So starts with a healthy soil.
One of the best ways to improve the health of soil is to increase the organic matter it contains. Hannah Gosnell, a professor at Oregon State University and an expert on regenerative ranching, explained how ranchers can increase the organic content in their soils by closely monitoring how their cattle graze.
So they kind of want the cow to go through and take one bite of everything and then move them on so that the plant has been stimulated to grow more roots, but it's not being killed.
The other tool we use is what's called pasture map.
To make sure his cattle aren't overgrazing any particular piece of land, Probert uses an app to track their movements.
And you can see that's where the herds are. So I can click on those. This shows me these lines, tell me where those animals are going to move next, tells me where they've been, how long they've been in each pasture.
Preventing cows from eating grasses all the way down to the root has a number of benefits.
And that impacts everybody. And so
Dallas Hall DeFries, the Regenerative Ranching Program Director with the nonprofit Sustainable Northwest, explained that increasing the water holding capacity of soil is one of the most important.
A ground like this that can, when rainfall happens, it absorbs it and holds it. That'll improve the soil water holding capacity, providing water at all layers of the soil so that those plants can take it up and increase their biomass and grow when the opportunity changes.
At Barnhart's Ranch in the Willamette Valley, the organic content of the soil is already high.
These are called an infiltration ring.
And water infiltrates the ground quickly.
Yeah. So at 1 minute, 7 seconds, it's gone. That's very good.
The same can't be said for much of eastern Oregon, which sees little rain and has compact, arid soils.
On another landscape that water is running off, in that one rain event that you might be getting for that whole summer, if it's running off, your plants are going to grow, and it just perpetuates kind of increasing bare ground.
Getting more water into the soil helps keep perennial native grasses flourishing. It increases biodiversity. It can prevent water from running off during heavy rains, which will be crucial as climate change makes extreme drought more widespread across western rangelands. And climate change has been an increasing concern for people like Probert, Barnhart, and Hall DeFries.
So as far as, the climate change here is, we talk about, what was normal, and then we start questioning that. So the rainfall curve here has come later into the year.
Wallowa County, my home county, had the hottest, driest summer on record last year.
One of the biggest benefits of regenerative ranching, according to Gosnell, was how it can help on both sides of the climate coin, aiding with adaptation to hotter, drier summers, and also helping to mitigate emissions by storing more carbon in the soil. And that's important because
livestock production is a huge contributor to climate change. Absolutely.
Agriculture in the U.S. accounts for somewhere between 3 and 10% of the country's total greenhouse gas emissions, according to the most recent estimates from academic researchers and the federal government. Cows produce a substantial amount of methane as part of their digestive process, but Hall-DeFries said regenerative practices can help offset some of those gases.
Methane, which cattle produce, exists in the atmosphere, and there's things to mitigate that, but not much. But the power that they have to sequester carbon when managed properly is really an advantage.
Doing so across all of country natural beef's rangelands could have a big effect on emissions.
And if we can increase carbon even a little bit across those 7 million acres, that will be a ginormous impact on the climate.
Just how big that impact will be remains to be seen. One of the first stages of the Grazewell program will be conducting soil tests that will give ranchers a baseline against which they can measure changes in the years to come. Gosnell estimated there were roughly 10,000 farmers and ranchers practicing regenerative forms of agriculture on an estimated 40 million acres worldwide in 2020, and probably more since then as the practices have gained in popularity. But Gosnell said there's still a number of barriers ranchers have to overcome to adopt these practices.
There's a lot of times there's fear of change, there's habit, there's tradition, there's ego and pride, because you kind of have to admit that the way you've been doing it isn't working and that you need to go do something, you'd have to do things differently. And that takes some humility.
Hall-DeFries said she thinks once ranchers see the benefits, regenerative practices will become more widespread.
I think that once people start seeing and looking across at their neighbor's fence and saying, wow, their grass is, their land is actually looking better. Maybe I should pay attention to what they're doing. I really think that this will start snowballing.
Of course, the simplest way to cut back on livestock emissions is to eat less beef. But cattle will remain an integral part of the Western landscape for the foreseeable future.
We really have a responsibility here to positively impact the land and make it not only sustain it, but improve it for generations to come.
Cale joins me now. It's really interesting how high-tech that's all become, to see the rancher pull out his phone and see where the cattle were going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the days of guys on horsebacks with lassos are long over. Not only are they using apps to track where all their cattle go, they're also using some pretty high-tech testing just to test the soil. They're going to be looking at organic matter composition, carbon sequestration, and water holding capacity.
Super interesting. Is it a harder sale in Eastern Oregon because it's so much drier there?
You know, I don't know whether it's really a harder sale, but I think change is going to happen a lot slower out there just because of the nature of where rain falls and how frequently in Oregon. The rancher down in Philomath, he said he gets about 90 inches of rain a year. Dan Probert, who has a ranch in Eastern Oregon, Wallowa County, said he gets about 6. And so there's just a much slower turnover of organic matter in that kind of environment.
So it'll take a lot longer to see the results, you think?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then finally, this is a really interesting and fascinating story, a very positive story. Is it all positive or is there a little gray in there?
There's definitely a gray area. I mean, environmental friendliness of livestock exists on a spectrum, everything from completely organic farming to industrial farming, which you may have seen if you've driven down I-5 in California, where there's just thousands of cows in feedlots. And feedlots are not super environmentally friendly. Country Natural Beef does finish their cows in feedlots. They spend the last few months of their lives there. They eat this incredibly energy-dense food to kind of give it the flavor and the texture that you're used to. And those aren't the most environmentally friendly places, but they said that they run their feedlots a little bit different than most places. They do give the cows access to pasture, so you still do see some of those benefits of the regenerative practices.
Very interesting. Thanks, Cale, for all you bring to us.
My pleasure.